You
The
don't share
sixth
with the
secret
big
one that I don't share with our personal big boys group. I don't know
Yeah.
why I don't do it, but I don't know, because like it's something fun I do. It's not integral to the split, because the split is 5 days, push-pull legs.
Yeah.
But on Sundays, before my leg session on the Monday, I like to do calisthenics.
Right.
And it's something I've recently gotten into. I feel like it's very athletic, very powerful. Like, I think it's very cool if you could just manage your own body weight and look strong with it and stuff. So, but that day is like, it's only 4 exercises into 2 supersets. The essential movements, really. It's like ring pull-ups.
What kind of calisthenics? I know that there's like calisthenics where people, like I've seen them on YouTube, they kind of do handstands and they can like push themselves off the ground with just their wrists and even like a mix of calisthenics with gymnastics. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's the calisthenics and more in relation to gymnastics. There's that side of calisthenics where people are more in favorable of isometric holds such as the front lever and, you know, the L-sit and stuff. Sure, that's cool. I'd love to do I haven't done either yet. I think I could. I've done the L-sit, but not the front lever. Front lever is you know,
what is a front lever?
Basically,
I don't know.
you just hang from. Imagine hanging from a bar.
Yeah.
And your body is literally like horizontal. Instead of hanging vertically, you're hanging horizontally like this. It's like you're rowing, but like you're completely like this.
Wow.
Yeah,
I actually have never seen
your
that.
Your lats are gonna go crazy. Like that isometric hold is insane. It requires a lot of strength. So,
but muscles don't grow bigger if you do calisthenics, right? So there's something about not having high enough weight. Even if you reach hypertrophy, they do increase in size. How does that work? Do you know?
There exists this paradox in calisthenics where people are like, oh, you can't build muscle out of it and stuff. But in theory, you can progressively overload it no matter what. Enter to the chat weighted calisthenics. Yeah. On one of my pull days, on the pull day that I have, which is on the Tuesday, my first exercise is a 1 rep max weighted chin up. So
you attach a weight to your waist.
Yeah, it entails getting a dip belt, attaching a weight to it, and you know, as you would do a 1 rep max for a squat, bench, deadlift, or whatever. Basically do that for a chin up.
What does that do? I've never done it. Like if I was to include it, what would it help me with?
Well, it would help you with your 1 rep max strength for sure. Your absolute power output in that moment, because 1 rep max is completely different to doing sets of 6, 8, 10 or whatnot. You'd utilize your phosphocreatine stores so much. Like it's so intense, and like with these very intense exercises that require lots of brute force and power, your body is going to thank you for it. You're going to release human growth hormone. Your testosterone is going to shoot up.
Okay, that's good. So, I was just going to ask specifically about that. I'm the kind of person that I go to the gym and I never really focused on numbers, but I get really excited about what does this session do for me. Like if like recently I've started to do a little bit more running and things like that, like before or after my sessions, because from what I understand that should lower my cholesterol a little bit. And so now you mentioned if you do a 1 rep, what did you say? It was follow creatine?
Phosphocreatine.
What is that? I've never heard of that before.
Basically, it's the first energy store in your body. It's like it takes about like 6-ish seconds to deplete, so you'd utilize it when you're doing like absolute like full power things such as sprinting, such as a 1 rep.
And does that go back after you rest, or is it one of those one-time training?
No, it's not a one-time thing, but like if you prolong your rest in between sets, you increase the load of it happening again. So that's why, for example, powerlifters do 1 rep maxes all the time in their training. So you'd see there exists this joke where, you know, they take naps and like have sweets like in between their sets. And the reason
in between sets, I love that.
The reason for that is so they could restore their energy stores and like, you know, go on with full force and power again as they did. And
is there any benefit to that being released straight away, or is it just like the way that something like this works?
Basically, with phosphocreatine, you know, there's a pathway, you know, interacts with creatine kinase and stuff, and phosphorylates it and causes basically cells to produce more ATP, which is essential for muscle contractility. And, that's why people who tend to be on studies show that like people who tend to supplement with creatine would increase their, for example, amount of reps they do in a set for a specific weight, increase their 1 rep max even. So, yeah.
So ATP, from what I understand, is essentially like what makes you energetic. It's the energy stuff in you.
Essentially, it's adenosine triphosphate. It's the things that supply your cells with energy,
and
for cellular respiration.
Would that at all make sense? If I'm doing 1 rep maxes, then after that I should feel pretty energetic and strong. And so, like, let's say I have a meeting later in the day. Going to the gym and doing something like 1 rep maxes would maybe like shake me up and wake me up in a similar way to coffee. Is that a right way of thinking about it, or not quite?
Well, caffeine is a completely different pathway on its own, but I would say it would energize you better than doing lactic acid work. Because lactic acid is very cardiovascularly.
That would be running and boxing, things like that, right?
Yeah, like just lifting for higher reps, talking like 15 plus reps, and just like, feeling that crampiness in your muscles, that sensation. So yeah, I feel like 1 rep max really activates your sympathetic nervous system, which is, the fight or flight response. You have the parasympathetic drive and the sympathetic drive. Sympathetic drive, increases blood pressure, cortisol and stuff like that. So
would that lower cortisol or increase cortisol?
Well, in the moment, it would increase cortisol.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's a drop-off effect. But after exercise, there's always a drop-off effect.
Yeah.
Because that's when parasympathetic drive kicks in. And it kicks in with more aggression, so to say.
That's so interesting. Tell a little bit for the 2.5 people watching. How do you know all these things? So, would you study? What do you study?
Well, firstly, I think it all started like even before my degree. Like I did sports medicine as my bachelor's. I'm currently doing applied physiology as my master's. Almost done with that. But I've looked into these things way before my degree. Like, as I said, I've been into this lifestyle since I was 15, so I just wanted to improve, learn more and stuff. So I think I learned a fair bit before I even started going into the deeper physiology, the deeper, epidemiology and clinical research that exists in this world in relation to sport and exercise.
What kind of clinical research? Because I know you're doing some of these things. What's like a recent one that you've been doing?
Well, last year for my dissertation, we did a supplement trial. Basically, we got beetroot juice.
Beetroot juice?
Yeah, beetroot juice. Yeah, I know, beetroot juice. Doesn't taste the best, but trust me. Nitric oxide is one hell of a thing. It's a vasodilator, so it expands your blood vessels. More blood flow and obviously more oxygenation to cells and muscles and theoretically better cardiovascular performance and exercise performance.
Does that low cholesterol?
Yeah. I mean, it makes your endothelium, which is your blood vessel, essentially.
Yeah.
Healthier. So. Yeah.
So then, what? How did you do it, and what did you find?
Well,
bring your mic touch closer to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Move it over. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Great.
We had an N of 6, which is 6 participants, which is it's hard to get statistical significance with such a low number. Especially
what's a good number?
I think for a study such as this, you definitely need over 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's less than I expected. I'd expect it to be like 100.
Well, the more you increase the sample size, the better, really, because you get in more factors, such as you can see effects in you can stratify your N number essentially. Say you have 100 people, and each one of them, a third of them are from a different race. You can stratify the data and add an additional layer saying, for example, in African Americans, the effect was more pronounced.
That's very interesting.
In Caucasian males, the effect was less pronounced. In Caucasian females, the effect was more pronounced. So that's the beauty of it.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so with 100 sample size, you can do like these multi-layered ones. And
essentially.
Then
you could hit more heads, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've done it with 6. How do you structure a clinical trial for physiology?
Well, we didn't structure it ourselves. The university, King's College London, structured it for us. I can't lie, it was a bit of a mess.
Oh,
N of 6 wasn't ideal, and what we wanted to do in a study like this, especially when you have people exercising and performing, basically it was a cycling time trial for 4 kilometers.
Yeah.
We wanted to see how they performed without the beetroot juice, a placebo, and with the beetroot juice.
What did you do for placebo?
We did not find the placebo. That's the thing. So
yeah,
that kind of invalidates our study in a sense.
Okay.
Because the participants knew exactly what they were taking on the day. So
interesting. Yeah, placebo is a really strong.
Placebo is like an excellent control factor for studies. Yeah.
What can you use for placebo?
Yeah, like we wanted to get like, I don't know, grape juice or something, or like something that
juice
or something that tastes similar, or like beetroot juice with the nitrate extracted and stuff.
Beetroot tastes so bad.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to confuse it with anything.
Yeah, that's the thing. Beetroot tastes so distinct. You need to get like some sort of drink,
beetroot?
like synthetic, like beetroot extract.
Yes.
I don't know, something like that.
So that like beetroot,
as long as
but
it
without the
doesn't have
nutrients.
dietary nitrate in it, we're good, because the dietary nitrate is what turns into nitric oxide eventually through the.
And is that one of the nutrients in beetroot?
Yeah, it is. It's one of the compounds found in beetroot.
Compound. What's the difference between a compound and a nutrient?
Well, they're quite similar, I'd say, but a compound is a chemical compound found in the thing itself. However, a nutrient.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Also, like vitamin C, and so that's a micronutrient. Though there you have micronutrient. So.
And then let's loop back to the study. And did you have a conclusion from it? Even though, like you said, it maybe not
trends.
too valid.
We saw trends.
What did it look like?
Well, for one, their nitric oxide concentration, which we tested through saliva, was higher in the beetroot trial.
And what does that mean?
They basically just showed us that they had the dietary nitrate in their system.
Okay.
Essentially. So having the beetroot juice did that, which was obvious.
Yeah.
In terms of time trial performance, it was a weird one, because on an individualistic basis, some people performed better, some people performed relatively the same, like very minimal changes, and there was one participant who performed way worse.
Ooh, interesting.
And we didn't have a familiarization period.
What's that?
Basically, to familiarize the participants with the study, and making them ride the bike beforehand, before undertaking the study. So that would have helped, my muscle connection, muscle memory.
Oh, interesting. I guess if you're doing the same track 5 times, you're gonna do it better on the 5th time than if it's the first time ever. You learn the turns. And things like that.
Yeah, but it was on a stationary bike, so a stationary bike in an exercise lab. So.
Oh, okay.
There's so many things that could affect performance there, regardless, because you have a mask that's attached to a tube attached to a Douglas bag. A Douglas bag is what collects your respiratory gases. And tells you VO2, VCO2, which is volume of oxygen consumed, volume of carbon dioxide produced. So, and basically gives you a measure of energy expenditure, really.
That's very interesting. I read all these study papers and I never know how they're made. Yeah. That's an interesting insight into it. And then let's look back even further to you. So you said this is something that you've been doing since before you even joined university, and now you're doing it at university. So tell me a little bit more about your interest in it, why you're doing it, and what you want to do with it. Talk me through it.
Well, I'll be honest, when I was approaching my final year of high school, I didn't really know what to do. I always thought, I'm going to end up in the business route. I'm going to have a business degree. I'm, going to follow in the footsteps of my cousins and work in a bank like my dad or something like that. But it never really interested me, I didn't see that for myself. And I was I'm always into sport. Sport is my life. I watch football religiously. I play it religiously. I like exercising, and I was a geek for science as well. So, and I didn't really want to do medicine. I didn't want to become a doctor, but I wanted to be part of a clinical setting and, delve into that realm. So I found my degree, sports and exercise medical science. I was perfect. This marries everything I love. So it marries the biological aspect that I'm very interested in. It marries the sport aspect that I'm obviously very interested in. And yeah, it was a good choice at the end. And now I'm doing my master's in clinical physiology, which is a more umbrella way to approach the whole matter, because you're not just specifically focused on sport. you're focused also on, how the body reacts in extreme environments, for example. Like the other day, we had a practical where we simulated a hypoxic environment in a hypoxic chamber and measured CPR performance.
Hypoxic chamber,
that's a report
is that
I'm doing right
where
now.
you have more concentration of oxygen?
Hypoxia is where there's less concentration of oxygen.
Less concentration of oxygen.
Like such as climbing a mountain at altitude.
Okay, yeah, I've just been in Bogota, and it's the highest capital in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're gonna hike to the mountains in that one, in the highest capital in the world, you reach 3,300 meters, which is pretty high.
Yeah, that
and I traveled with my partner, and she was completely fine with it. But for me, the moment that I stepped out of the car and we started the hike, I felt such weakness and a bit of lightheadedness.
Acute mountain sickness settling in.
Like I'm picking up my backpack.
Did you feel like you were hyperventilating?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it stayed with me for like the first 3 days as we were hiking. And then eventually it got better. And by the end of the week, it got a lot better. But for the first 3 days, it was interesting. I was kind of the only one in the group which felt really lightheaded.
Yeah, that's the adaptation process for altitude.
Oh, yeah. I've never... it makes so much sense if you're like a Colombian football team and you're playing at the World Cup. You're going to play on a high stadium in the mountains.
I know. It's such a huge advantage for you, especially if you... But thing is, most of the Colombian national team players are also going to have to deal with that because most of them play for European clubs.
Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense.
They're not living like in Bogota, for example.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But like, I'll take this to another example. The Bolivian national team.
Yeah.
I think Bolivia is. I think what's it? No, Machu Picchu is in
Peru.
Is in
yes,
Peru, yeah.
Yes.
But like Bolivia is also quite high altitude. One of the national stadiums is quite high in altitude, and I remember a few years ago they were playing Argentina in a friendly.
Oh,
and everyone was like,
there are no friendlies between South American countries.
Yeah, true.
It all goes.
Yeah, exactly.
all or nothing.
So everyone was like, oh, obviously routine. Argentina win. Messi is gonna do his thing and whatnot. Bolivia won.
Wow. And do you think that's...
I think it does play a huge role because when you're exercising in such a oxygen depleted environment, you're gonna feel it no matter who you are. You could be Messi, you could be Ronaldo, you could be anything. You're highly trained athletes. You're still gonna feel it, because your fraction of inspired oxygen is just gonna reduce.
Yeah,
that's just how it is.
You'll have great input on this. I was debating it with my family whether such exercise is healthy. Because from one point of view, you are in the mountains and it's high altitude. There's like this narrative that the mountains have healthy air. But then from the other side, the hike that we went on, we had a group in front of us, which consisted of some older folks, age 65 and up. And we were taking our time. They were a big group and they're, a touch older. We were not in a rush anywhere. And we were later informed that the people in front of us, one of them actually had a heart attack on the hike. And it must be because, they're not local and they're doing a sports activity in high altitude. So I was really wondering if something like this is objectively healthy to do in moderation. And from my general feeling, it feels a little bit like scuba diving, where it's not healthy because it goes past the threshold of pushing you into the territory of overexertion. What's your take on that? If you go and do some sports at a high altitude and you've never done that before, is that a good net positive or is it not?
Firstly, I feel like you need to adapt first. If you're going to high altitude, I wouldn't like, now I'm not adapted to high altitude. We live in London. That's pretty much sea level.
Yeah.
So
such a flat city.
Exactly, yeah. Very minimal elevation gains. So if I wouldn't go to, basically halfway through Everest and just go for a 5K.
Why not? Why is that a bad thing in your opinion?
I don't know. There's too much risk to it because there's no adaptation process, Your hemoglobin stores aren't made for it. Your red blood cells aren't they didn't go through the adaptation process for you. Basically, when you enter altitude, you have acute adaptations and then you have chronic adaptations.
What's the difference?
So acute mountain sickness and chronic mountain sickness.
Okay.
Acute mountain sickness is the immediate responses, such as the hyperventilation.
Yeah.
Which obviously, when you hyperventilate a lot, you're expelling CO2.
Yep.
And that leads to that makes your blood more alkaline.
Yeah.
And that makes you suffer from respiratory alkalosis, which causes cerebral vasoconstriction.
Right. What's that?
Basically, it's when blood vessels in the brain constrict; they become very narrow.
You know what?
Yeah.
I felt
That's
like
why the headaches,
right side of my head, just here, was so tense and just pulsating. So that was literally the blood vessels getting narrower. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they constrict and like it just causes one big headache, and cerebral blood flow kind of reduces. So that's why you feel like a bit dizzy and all that.
Right.
And then you have the chronic adaptations.
What's that?
Say if you stay in a mountain for a few days, you're not going to keep hyperventilating and stuff. Eventually, your carotid bodies are going to detect the lack of CO2. Your peripheral chemoreceptors, which basically chemoreceptors are essentially detectors of oxygen and CO2. So if oxygen is low, it's going to send a signal to your brainstem and the respiratory centers for you to hyperventilate. Then when CO2 is low, it's going to reduce, the respiration rate. So that's how it works.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing? So
no, it's fine. If
it's just
it's
a process.
Yeah, just a process. And in terms of hemodynamics, your liver produces something called erythropoietin.
Right, what's that?
It's essentially a compound that forces the growth of red blood cells from the bone marrow.
Okay.
So more red blood cells, oxygen carrying capacity, they bind to hemoglobin. So more oxygen is carried throughout your blood. So that's why
that sounds like a good thing, right?
Yeah, but thing is there's a take to that, because if you have more red blood cells, your hematocrit increases and your blood becomes more viscous.
And
becomes more thick. More prone to clotting, which is why maybe that fella had a heart attack.
Yeah,
that quick, especially at that age, it's quite imaginable.
Of course, yeah. He looked even older than the rest of the group. That's so interesting. I played for a local football club in Cyprus called Akritas, and our coach was telling us about this practice. Not to incriminate anyone, let's just say it was hypothetical.
Yeah.
That in order to perform better before an important football game, you could go to watch out. You could go to the local Troodos Mountains. Yeah. The elevation is not too high; it's about 2,200 meters, or maybe 2,100 meters, and you could train there for, let's say, 2-3 days, and then they would take your own blood into these packs and store it, and before an important football game they could use that same blood and shoot that back into you.
Blood transfusion.
Blood transfusion. And apparently it has incredibly good results in terms of performance. No way to detect it. Like with doping, you're taking alien substances. There are traces of it. With good enough technology, you can find out. This doesn't have any traces. It's your own blood that was just trained at high altitude. So would that be because you have more hemoglobin cells and you then get that blood transfusion? You then play like an animal. Is that what it is?
That's so funny, because like in the Tour de France, EPO, erythropoietin, the thing I told you about, is used as a thing to dope with. And that causes increased red blood cells. Yeah. So what you just said is basically, we get the erythropoietin naturally, store it, and take it back. Yeah. I'm honestly not sure of the legal side of it, but honestly, it sounds like something.
It works.
Clearly, it's. I don't know. It's an odd one. It's a tricky one because it's blood doping, But like it's you're not taking like a foreign substance
Exactly.
in a way.
Well, if
odd.
it would definitely
But
be
I think
illegal.
there's a big risk because if you just suddenly introduce so much more red blood cells into your system, like I told you, you could get a clot potentially.
Oh, interesting. So the risk is that it could. Would you say that that would have a higher risk of blood clot than doping? Because doping makes you produce it gradually, and with the blood transfusion, it just dumps all that extra blood cells into your system.
I think with doping, it's more. I would imagine with doping, it's more risky.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how sports work, and I'm really excited to talk to you about this because I know you follow sports so much. They make the Olympic Committee, at least, they make certain changes to rules as time goes on, and certain things become allowed that weren't before. And one of the interesting ones that I heard of was they invented a swimming suit, which was so good because it uses some like NASA technology that like an amateur swimmer can come close to world records. And so they ended up banning it from using, even though it technically passes all the qualifications that it should. But because the performance is so rapidly drastic, they banned it, which I'm not against. But then I listened to this reporter on YouTube who said an interesting fact. And I guess in a way I completely agree with him. He said that if this suit had like 5 models and over time it gradually increased to be better and better and better, they wouldn't have an issue with it. The same way how baseball gloves have evolved. What they used to do in the 80s is they would take some... what's that substance called that grows on trees? It's like very sticky, very thick juice. Do you know what I mean?
Tree sap?
Yes. So they would put that on the baseball glove.
Oh, okay.
In order to catch the ball. And they
know
made that illegal in the 80s.
Yeah.
But now we have such good technology to develop gloves that the actual gloves they use to catch baseballs is even more sticky than if you apply this substance. But the reason they allowed it is, first of all, it's technology and not like it feels like it's more in the spirit with the sport. But if you just look at the technical point of view, it kind of doesn't make sense. Do you know what I mean? So, what do you think of that?
Well, that's a tough one because, like, if you're applying something to a glove that wasn't already on the glove and wasn't made with the glove, then that's like, it's like doping in a way, doping with equipment.
Yeah.
You're getting something foreign, you're putting it onto it that shouldn't be there.
But then if equipment gets good enough that you don't need to apply
just like
it
how training
normal.
and nutrition has become so good now that you optimize your hormone levels.
How does that
better.
work? Talk me through it.
Like, for example, if instead of taking testosterone synthetically, you do things that optimize your testosterone level.
Is it
obviously it's not going to be
legs?
to the same extent, like having proper nutrition, sleeping well, basically being the ideal human.
Oh, I heard that doing legs at the gym increases your testosterone production. Is there any truth to that?
There is truth to that because it's such a large muscle group. It's the biggest muscle group in your body.
Yeah.
So when you work them, especially during squats are such an intense, heavy compound exercise. Growth hormone, testosterone shoots through. I think there were studies previously where they measured people's free testosterone in the blood before doing squats and after doing squats.
Really?
And they found that like it was significantly higher after the squats.
Really?
Yeah, so it shoots up.
I found that after starting Taekwondo, my beard started growing much faster.
Well, maybe you have higher testosterone because you're exercising.
I told that to my partner, and so she was hesitant. So was I. But It could be that because I've never done legs at the gym. It's just not something that I kind of fall into. I train mostly like twice a week. I do upper body, and my whole life coaches have been like, "Oh, you have to train your upper body and your lower body because otherwise you'll be unproportional." And it's been a good 6 years for me waiting to reach such a big physique that I'm unproportional to something.
I love that.
Anyway, so as I've started doing Taekwondo, it's a lot of glutes, it's a lot of quads, it's a lot of calves, it's a lot of jumping and things like that.
Lots of leg work, yeah.
And just might be... So I wonder if it's that.
Could be, actually. Could very well be. Or maybe it's because the weather is getting better now and like we're getting more vitamin D, and vitamin D increases testosterone as well.
Well, I take vitamin D supplements. I take a huge dose of vitamin D mixed with olive oil because I think vitamin D only absorbs with some sort of fat. I take 5,000
your
units.
Pharmacology.
I'm recently into it. It's also known to lower cholesterol, and I have a really, really high one. So I'm trying to work on that. So I've been taking a few supplements. Are you taking any supplements? You know so much about it, so I expect that you do?
The supplements I take are multivitamins, omega-3 fish oils, and creatine.
Oh, nice.
Simple,
Great. How much creatine do you take?
I aim for 3 grams.
Very interesting. They recommend 5, but I've heard a few people say...
If you're saturated, then it's fine. If you're saturated, eventually you're going to reach, whether you supplement with 3 grams, 5 grams, or you want to reach saturation quickly and you supplement with 7 grams, at the end of the day, you're going to saturate. But I feel like 3 is a good amount per day.
And I guess just any excess just leaves your body without being absorbed, right?
Well, I feel like with the thing is with creatine... It binds to water very, very strongly.
Yep.
So people who supplement with creatine are going to find themselves very thirsty. That's why creatine gives you the fuller look when you're on it, because your muscles hold water. There's water retention there. People tend to look puffier on creatine, like larger.
But strangely in a good way.
In a good way, yeah. You don't look fatter. You just look fuller. That's why.
I gained about 4.5 kilos when I was on creatine, and I've reached saturation. Most of it is
going to be water weight.
Yeah.
When you're on creatine, you're more likely to gain weight because of that water retention.
But I look good.
And there's another side to it because, the performance boost is going to give you that extra edge when you're lifting. For example, you could lift heavier or lift more reps, whichever program you follow. So creatine, if you want to gain weight, it's quite the code.
Creatine in these gummy bears.
Oh, you do?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I've always wondered, there's a bit of sugar, which, whatever. Is there any negative to it in taking it in that form rather than mixing it with water?
I've seen the gummy scene for creatine come out a lot recently. And I have to be honest, I'm not very clued up on it. On, the difference between gummies and powders. But I personally have always taken it as a powder. I even dry scoop it. Like I don't even mix it in water. I've reached that point. I just take the scoop and then chug water.
That's so wow. Now that sounds fun.
Not very. It lacks some decorum, I'd say. But
and then so you take multivitamins, creatine, and omega-3. I take omega-3, and I was taking it for a long time, and then I realized that they have 2 substances inside, and I forget what they are. But if we can double check if we want to, and for the good brands of omega-3 have a high percentage of the good omega-3 and less of the other one. Do you know anything about it?
No, I'm unfamiliar with that.
All right. Well,
let's have a look.
Let's have a look, and we'll be back.
Let's have a look.
Okay, and we are back. So
indeed, we are.
What did we find, Malik?
We found 2 different chains of fatty acids found in omega-3, EPA and DHA.
And apparently for my purpose, which helps to lower cholesterol, you're supposed to have whatever this brand has, which I'll find right now. So it's supposed to be around 700 EPA to 400 DHA. That would be the ratio that they recommend for my case. And do you know like what could be the difference at all?
From my understanding, each chain has a different effect on your LDL cholesterol and HDL cholesterol.
Yeah.
LDL cholesterol is your low density lipoprotein essentially. And
which is
it's the bad one.
It's the bad one.
It's the one that can lead to diseases such as coronary heart disease, atherosclerosis, and those things, you know. HDL is the good one.
Yeah.
So, in fact, you could have a high LDL cholesterol and a high HDL cholesterol. As long as the ratio is in a certain point, you'll be fine.
What does it mean if both are really high? Because if, let's say the ratio is good, but
the ratio is what matters with those two.
Is there any problems to both of them just being very high?
Well, HDL being high is mostly fine. LDL being high can cause a bit of an issue, but if the ratio is in check, you'll be fine because HDL reduces LDL, so, you know.
Oh, I'm looking at my phone because do you know Gary Brecka?
No.
You should listen to him. You'd be really interested in what he's doing. So Gary Brecka has a very interesting story. He used to work in the mortality industry. So he would insure like health insurance. And something to do with their company getting the blood results of their patients, and they developed such a good algorithm to narrow it down to like a 2-week prediction of lifespan. And they were right at an extremely high amount of times, like about 30% of their participants, they were right within their 2 weeks that they've narrowed it down to, which is a huge amount.
Yeah, that's insane.
And he never studied medicine, but he found that through, you know, these combinations, they were able to identify it. So he kind of worked it from the back, and he's like, okay, but what if we increase that and that and that in the body, or decrease some other elements, like for example decreasing LDL cholesterol would obviously increase the presumed lifespan by quite a lot. He figured it all out, spent 10 years doing his own research, has no medical license whatsoever, and opened his clinic. He partnered up with a doctor.
Like a doctor without being a doctor.
Exactly.
I admire that.
Extremely controversial. So whoever is listening to him, don't take his word for you know, everything. But you know Dana White?
Yeah.
So Dana White, the founder of UFC, has struggled with his health for like an extreme amount of time.
I know where this is going.
And then he came around and he said, give me 2 months, I'll fix you. And he's tried doctors and GPs and everybody else, and Dana White was like, fuck it, let's do it. So they've done some super basic things, like they fixed his circadian rhythm, put him on a couple of supplements, made sure that the vitamins he's taking are methylated and not regular vitamins, so they're actually absorbed, because apparently there's a difference between methylated vitamins versus non-ones, depending on the gene structure that you have.
Yeah, and their gut microbiome and everything.
Something about that as well. And then fixed his nutrition a touch. So basically nothing that goes crazy out of the ordinary. But Dana White then reported, you know, feeling the best it has in 20 years. He visually lost lots of weight, feels so much healthier. And then this guy blew up a lot because he's got this great recommendation from a really big guy. He's on all podcasts. So where I'm going with all of this is he said a lot of things which are really interesting. One that I found is he says that cholesterol is not necessarily a bad thing, even LDL cholesterol, because what's more important is the size of those cholesterol, molecules, rather than the quantity. And if you have, I believe, a lot of LDL, but they're a large size, that doesn't seem to have any negative effects than if you have a lot of them and they're small.
Yeah.
And when you check LDL, both are taken into account together. And he says there's some other tests that people with high cholesterol can do in order to identify whether they're in the risk group or not. So what do you think of all that? Do you know anything about it?
Well, in terms of the size, I see what he's onto. Because the risk with LDL, I'll explain it to you now, with atherosclerosis, a disease I just mentioned. So atherosclerosis is basically the buildup of a plaque
What's a plaque?
A plaque is, a mixture of an amalgamation of multiple things that just build up in an artery and block it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the contents of that plaque is LDL cholesterol.
Okay.
So that's why if you have higher LDL cholesterol, you're more likely to get a heart attack. It's through that pathway.
So is it like a binder for all the other stuff in your blood that makes a heart attack happen?
It just because it breaks, say, I'm going to give this in a very informal way.
Yes.
Say it breaks into the blood vessel, yeah?
Okay.
And then suddenly, oh shit, can I swear?
Yes,
Oh,
okay.
shit. Inflammation and like all that stuff happens. And then LDL comes, your immune system is like, oh, what the hell is going on? So
Okay.
it sends macrophages, immune cells, basically. And then they go up and eat the LDL. And
Okay.
then they foam up because they die. And then that LDL inside, it hardens.
Wow.
And then eventually a plaque forms. Calcium goes in there because, smooth muscle cells also release calcium in your arteries. And yeah, eventually over time, this structure just keeps getting larger and larger until eventually one day it can break off, develop a thrombus.
Okay,
and
that's how
get,
thrombus
a
is created.
stroke. Or
Wow.
it blocks the artery, you get a heart attack.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a scary thought.
Yeah, I know. But that's,
If you decrease your cholesterol level over a long period of time, let's say you had it high for 10 years and then for another 10 years you made it drop, does this plaque buildup disappear? Or once you had high cholesterol for a long time, there's no way back really?
No, that does reduce. Like your arteries can clear up when you eat clean and just follow a good lifestyle. So yeah, but funny thing about cholesterol is it's the precursor to testosterone.
What's a precursor?
It's basically the element that's before testosterone. Like you essentially need cholesterol to form testosterone. That's why people on high-fat diets are more likely to have higher levels of testosterone.
Wait, are you saying that if my body...
But obviously there's a leeway.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, 150 kilos overweight and your cholesterol's through the roof and be like, oh yeah, I have testosterone, I'm jacked and stuff.
Tell me if this is wishful thinking or if it has any merit to it. If I, let's say, do exercises that are known to produce a lot of testosterone, would that technically mean that my cholesterol is being used up and turned into testosterone?
That's a good question. Well, you're gonna need the egg before the chicken, so
Well, maybe you could do one of those clinical trials in it.
Maybe.
Get people with
I need to look into that.
high cholesterol, make them do legs. What else releases a lot of...
Maybe that's why when you exercise, you reduce your cholesterol level. Because you increase your
Ooh.
testosterone level. Maybe there's an inverse relationship. I don't know. Don't quote me on it.
But actually, I would think differently because from what I understand, like long distance running releases quite little testosterone. And it's more like what we discussed before, one weight reps that release a lot of testosterone.
Yeah.
But then long distance running is known to reduce your cholesterol level as it improves cardiovascular health. But then I haven't heard anything about powerlifters having low cholesterol.
Well, the one thing about long distance running is a very stressful, prolonged activity. So
Yes.
it can slightly reduce your testosterone in the short term.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Why does it do that?
That's the high stress from the cortisol. Cortisol and testosterone are known to have an inverse relationship.
Okay.
Such as when you wake up from a sleep-deprived night,
Yep.
muscle protein synthesis reduces, testosterone bioavailability reduces. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Very
That's why I
interesting.
feel shitty when you're sleep-deprived.
Yeah, I heard more and more people say that like sleep is the biggest superpower that we have, and I feel it myself. I think if I sleep, I think it's a few things. I actually don't believe. I was just mentioning it to on the previous podcast that I don't believe that A leads to B. It's never as simple as that. It's usually like A and another 10 factors that lead to a different result. It's just that A takes up the biggest part of it, but then everything else really contributes to it as well.
Nothing is ever A to B, I've learned, because there's so much individual variability.
I think so.
Everyone is different. Everyone's genome is different.
So I think with me, if I sleep, but in addition to that, I didn't have any alcohol before, and I didn't have like an ultra stressful day. If these things fall into place and I had a good night of sleep, I feel really sharp. I feel like I make quicker decisions, higher quality decisions. Also, I'm in the business of decision making. Usually, that's what Jeff Bezos talks about quite often. If you run a company and you sorry, just somebody said hi to me from the outside. If you're in a company and you are trying to sustain it rather than grow it, you really only need to make 3 or 4 important decisions a week. You don't need to make 50. So what's really important to invest into is to make sure that these 3 or 4 decisions that you make are high quality. And I feel like sleep and some other things really help with that. But yeah.
I'd have to agree, because sleep is, as you said, one of the best superpowers, and so many people undervalue it. You hear so many people say, sleep is for the weak. You need to wake up and grind. Sleep at 10, wake up at 3 in the morning, get your work done.
Yeah.
I get that you want to get things done early and stuff. But I'm the type of person where I like to think there's the same amount of hours in the day.
Yeah.
As long as you get, your priorities straight, you can do anything you want.
What's your, you're very health conscious. So do you have a morning routine, or do you do something about keeping your circadian rhythm steady? Do you have any takes on that?
I like to sleep as best as I can in the same time and wake up at the same time. I like to sleep in a pitch black room.
Does that affect it?
Yeah. For me, especially in studies have shown that you get better REM sleep, better
Really?
deep sleep when you're in a literal dark room. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and there were times in my life where I've slept with some sunlight creeping in. I just woke up,
Interesting. Yeah. I know that if you look at a bright light first thing in the morning, if the brightest light you see is in your first hour of the day, that should really help your circadian rhythm figure itself out.
It does.
That's why TVs really screw you over, because you spend the whole day behind, in dark places in the office. Then you go home and you're in front of a bright TV.
Yeah, it's your TV, your iPad, your laptop, everything.
And then suddenly the light as bright you've seen is late in the evening, and your brain, still the chimp monkey brain is what the hell's going on?
Yeah, it's because when you're exposed to darkness, your body produces melatonin, and as we know, melatonin is what causes us to feel sleepy and basically drags us to sleep. And
is there any truth to that? If you go to sleep before midnight, you have better quality sleep than if you go after midnight?
Again, it depends, because I feel like that applies to people who sleep with literal windows without blinds, Because that causes the sun to wake you up as it rises.
Okay.
The more light that enters the room, the more gradually you're gonna wake up. So.
Oh, that's very interesting. So because of what you mentioned earlier, where depending on the light level in the room, that makes you go into less deep REM sleep if there's more light. That could affect.
Yeah, because thing is, you can sleep in a pitch black room and all of that is fun and well, but if your alarm clock wakes you up in the middle of REM sleep, good luck.
Okay.
You're going to be very tired.
I heard that 1-hour naps are terrible because your first REM sleep happens after 30 minutes and your second REM sleep happens after 90 minutes. So if you wake up between those, that sucks.
Yeah, it does. That's why you should wake up always in your light sleep.
Yeah.
It should be a gradual, it's imagine being floating through the depths of the ocean, and then suddenly you're brought to the surface.
Okay.
What's going to happen? Decompression sickness.
Yes.
Anything that you're deep in and you're dragged out of is bad.
Do you scuba dive?
No, I don't.
You should scuba dive.
I'm tempted one day.
It's
one
a
day.
whole
Because like scuba
world.
diving and like diving physiology is also the other part of the degree I'm doing. Like in
Really?
one of the modules, it's like we looked at altitude and we looked at deep sea physiology.
Me and you should go to the Philippines and we should go scuba diving.
I'm down.
It takes like 3 days to learn it.
I'm
You
down.
get your license and you can do it for the rest of your life.
As long as I'm not under like below 1 atmosphere, I'm good.
So 1 atmosphere happens. Well, no, you're right now. You're at 1 atmosphere, right? And then when you go 10 meters below,
It's 2
it's 2 atmospheres.
Yeah.
And then when you go another 10 meters below, it's 3 atmospheres.
Yeah.
The license that you get if you want to get into scuba diving allows you to go as deep as 18 meters. And to be honest, for like 80% of the people diving, I think that's enough. I had my 18 meter license for such a long time, and I never really needed to go any deeper before that. But that's going to be like 2, almost 3 atmospheres. Why don't you want to go below that?
I don't know, just because because I've learned the physiology, I'm kind of terrified of diving.
Well, divers are known for 2 things: having bad hearing and dying young, because all sorts of things happen. It's a pretty extreme sport.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact reasons, but I know that like that's the statistic. So
I'm into snorkeling. We can do snorkeling, but diving, I don't know about that.
but I think it's worth it. It's like the closest chance in our lifetime to be on a different planet.
That is true.
Is being underwater. It's a
true.
whole different world with different stimuli. You're under
Different
there.
creatures. Everything's different down there.
And it feels different because if you're in a forest and you come across an ecosystem, everything kind of is spooky of each other. Nothing coexists. Like if a squirrel comes next to a hedgehog, they won't like that. They'll kind of try to make an effort to go their own different ways. Underwater, it's a bit different in the sense that things are so crammed right next to each other. There are corals and fish and bigger fish and some like non-fish aquatic animals like turtles. And there's no way, like in the forest, you can go up a tree, nothing sees you. That's not really the case underwater.
Yeah.
The most you can do is hide behind some seaweed, but that
some
won't
coral or something.
that won't change that much. So
you can be attacked from all angles.
you can be attacked from all angles. What I've noticed is that all of these creatures, they just kind of mind their own business, and they really don't mind the close proximity they have with each other. Obviously, a big human that breathes out oxygen is a little bit disturbing, but even then, things swim past you, and people have these really close encounters with other forms of life that is not possible anywhere else in the wild.
Like, when are you going to see an orca? Like,
Yeah.
walking on the street.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen.
But if you did see an orca walking on the street, it would see you from 500 meters
I
away.
think I'd be high if I'm seeing an orca walking on the street. Yeah, go on. You were saying if we see an orca.
If we see an orca in the street, first thing we should do is check if we're high. But if not, then it will cross the road when it sees you from far away. And that doesn't happen. Like, I had an encounter where a turtle was swinging by, and it just ignored me and swam like right touching my side of the arm, because I wasn't bothering, I wasn't making eye contact with it, and neither was it. And that's the real beauty of the underwater world.
Yeah.
It's just it's a different rules.
Yeah.
It's different. It's just as close as you can get to another planet.
The thing is, there are some reminders, like with deep sea expedition and stuff, like that tell humans, like, oh, you don't belong here. You know, like, think of the Titanic, for example. Like, you're in the water, you're freezing cold, hypothermia kicks in. And thing is, like, we'll touch on to this, but I want to bring back physiology a bit.
Yes. Well,
if you jump into water,
yes,
you have two responses.
Yes,
as in, like, for open water, it's obviously colder and stuff. You have the cold shock response, and you have the mammalian diving response.
Right. What are the two?
Okay, the cold shock response, basically jump into water. You have the sudden gasp, and, you know, your heart rate increases, all these this sympathetic drive kicks in, this moment of stress and like just panicking and, you know, thrashing your arms and stuff. That's the cold shock response. And you can't avoid this gasp. And if you're underwater, what happens if you gasp? You're going to drown.
Oh, that is so interesting. Yeah, you know, I take ice plunges.
Yeah.
And whenever I get in, even if...
You can't beat it. You just can't.
My partner's sleeping in the next room and I'm trying to be quiet. I jump in that bath. Like,
Yeah, it's always going to happen.
I can't help
That's
it.
why people are likely to drown, like, just jumping into, like, even in triathlons.
Oh,
Most
wow.
deaths occur in the swimming phase. And I'll touch on to another part that's not drowning. The parasympathetic drive that sets in when your face touches water. You
Yeah.
have a nerve here called the trigeminal nerve. When water comes into contact, you get parasympathetic drive, which is basically lowering of the heart rate and you know, basically preserving blood, basically.
Okay.
You know? Less blood flow to the peripheries, more central blood flow and everything. Because, you know, you want to preserve oxygen and all that. Like, imagine a whale.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a whale just like, their hearts beat so slow.
Yeah.
That's basically what happens. And when you have parasympathetic drive and sympathetic drive going on at the same time, it's like hitting the gas and the accelerator of your car.
You mean the gas and the brake, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The gas and the brake. Whoa, the gas and the accelerator. Oh, you're
Formula
gonna
One.
Zoom, you're gonna zoom forward. Yeah, my bad. The brake and the gas.
Yeah.
If you press them both at the same time, what's gonna happen? The car is gonna start drifting, isn't it? So.
Oh, wow.
But the thing is, like, what's
analogy.
the thing that changes the most, like, during parasympathetic and sympathetic drives? Your heart rate changes a lot.
Yeah.
So with this multifaceted approach, you're more likely to get a cardiac arrhythmia because the increase and decreases in heart rate. Remember, our heart runs on electrical signaling. Yeah. Like, you have the SA node, the AV node. These electrical impulses run through these. So the constant increase-decrease can lead to cardiac arrhythmias. And, you know, cardiac arrhythmias can lead to cardiac arrest.
Wow.
Cardiac arrest, if you're not saved in time, can lead to death.
And it doesn't cancel itself out. It's just your heart gets mixed signals.
Yeah, you could just be so unlucky. Say you're someone with heart failure, for example.
Yeah.
And you do this, I'd be careful. That's why wetsuits have this covered. You know?
Yeah. The human body is so fascinating.
And it's like not like it's an insulator. So
yeah. Wetsuits are wonderful.
yeah,
and
that's why they prevent this this autonomic conflict. In the words of Dr. Mike Shattuck, shout out.
Who's that?
Is my professor.
Ah.
He did so much research on autonomic conflict. So, and it's quite inspiring. I found it very interesting.
It is very interesting. I think, I can really understand why you're so interested in how physiology works, because it not only like relates to just studies regarding sport, but just to our everyday lives.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so much to do with understanding how we work, how we operate. It's that stuff is really cool.
Yeah.
Do you know, for example, why? I think there's recent research in. They found out when you get in water, your fingers get wrinkly. Do you know why that is?
Yeah, it happens so you can grip things.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Your body has such a niche little thing.
It's so cool, isn't it?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Also, I think this is a bit of an exaggeration. I can swim without these things getting gripply. My body can just relax. But it does it anyway.
Maybe you've got some skin condition going on.
It's amazing.
It's resistant to water. Hydrophobic skin.
Well, I have a weird thing where it must run the family or something, because my folks have it as well. The skin on my fingers gets dry, and I went to a dermatologist and they said that it's psoriasis. And I thought, oh well, I guess I put creams on it. And then when I started taking vitamin D in order to like lower my cholesterol, it passed like completely. Which means it was just a vitamin D deficiency. And to me, it's a weird thing because I really trust doctors. I really like doctors. But I guess we're all a little bit human.
Yeah, we're all human after all.
And people have a tendency, in my opinion, where if they don't know something, 100%,
Mm-hmm.
but it's close to a possibility.
Yeah. You link it to that possibility.
They'll link it to that possibility because it could be 20 things.
Mhm.
But if 90% of people have one of these 20 things, then you're very likely to diagnose. Sorry, what did I say? No, if 19 out of the 20 people have this one thing, basically, if it's very common, you're more likely to be diagnosed with it. But in my example, it was so not that, and I fixed it with a very basic supplement.
Store-bought and everything.
Improved my quality of life, and it was so much better.
That's the thing, like, with so much research going on now, things kind of become common knowledge in a way. So people would just be like, A to B, resort to that. Like we mentioned, like sometimes you don't factor in the other factors and possible intermediates in the pathway. Yeah, that's a thing. And like sometimes, as you say, doctors are human after all. So at the end of the day, you might be biased to your own beliefs and your own research and what you know, instead of being like, what if? I think that's also down to character a bit.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for sure. I think that's why it's great to get second opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I always tell someone like, you're not feeling well and you're not getting an answer from a doctor and you're being like, or telling you, like, one of the most annoying things is like, I remember once in my life, I had a breathing problem, I think at 16. And for context, I had a deviated septum and I can't breathe from my left nostril whatsoever. I still can't.
Oh, wow.
So I can only breathe from the right, and the right one gets blocked. So I used to take a medication called Otrivin, which opens up,
Don't you get addicted to this stuff?
They say addicted and stuff. I had a huge reliance on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it helped me like breathe. Like I take it before I sleep. Suddenly in the day my nose blocks because it causes your nasal passages to get blocked chronically.
Yeah.
So, and it would give me relief. So I take it all the time. And I took it for a good few years actually. And eventually when I was 16, I don't know, my blood pressure shot up and and like I started feeling like, I was so scared. I was like researching everything, and when you Google symptoms,
it's the worst.
It's like, you're gonna
don't do it.
I thought I had a cardiac arrhythmia. I thought I was gonna get a heart attack. I thought I had heart failure, and I was thinking to myself, I exercise, I run, and at the time I used to run way more. Like now I play football and stuff and lift and stuff, so running is like not as extreme on my schedule. But back then, you could say I was more of a long distance runner. So
that's so cool.
I was like freaking out. I was like, what more can I do? I focused more on my sleep. There was once a point I reached where I turned vegan.
Oh,
I was like, maybe the sodium in the meats are increasing my blood pressure. I started drinking more water. I just stopped drinking caffeine and
nothing helped.
Nothing really helped. The veganism kind of helped, to be honest. Yeah, surprisingly. But nothing really helped until one day I was like, okay, maybe it's a lung problem. And then I went to a doctor, and then he was like, you have mild asthma. And then I was like, okay, not too bad. Just take the asthma bronchodilators. That's
weird. Nobody gets asthma. If people grow out of asthma, they have asthma when they're 10, and by the time they reach their 20s, it's gone. But I'd never heard of people not having asthma and then randomly getting it 16.
I might have had it this whole time, but it wasn't as pronounced. I'm not sure, because now I'm completely fine. And ever since I took that one round of bronchodilators, I've been okay. But the doctor mentioned something that had nothing to do with the appointment. He just said Otrivin increases blood pressure. And I didn't even mention Otrivin. I don't know. I don't know how that came up, but like he was like, and then I just looked at him. I was like, oh shit.
That's even taking it.
And then ever since then, I just stopped, and I didn't have those issues.
Could it be that you never had asthma? You just had high blood pressure, which worked around your body to cause a few lung problems.
Potentially, yeah.
And then when you stopped taking it, your lungs just took some time and recovered.
Potentially.
This is so interesting. Mm-hmm. My partner has vitiligo. And so anytime she goes to the doctor for anything and they see the vitiligo, they're like, oh yeah, it must be that.
Yeah.
And it's really annoying because it could be that. But it could also not be that.
Yeah.
Like if throughout the lifetime a person with vitiligo has 20 issues, not all 20 are going to be linked to vitiligo.
Absolutely,
it's just not going to be the case. Yeah, let's say 10, 15 maybe, but
they
they're
just
going
want
to
a safe option to give a diagnosis.
Exactly.
It's a shame.
Yeah, I guess people also don't like being wrong, and if you have a socially acceptable...
it's like, I'm a doctor, I can't be wrong.
That, and also if you opt for the safe option, like you kind of take a little bit of responsibility off you. With that said, I really like doctors. I respect them. I trust them. I've also mentioned it in the previous podcast where I think it would be really great if like every doctor had a really fat Rolex and an expensive car. And doctors obviously do make on average more than regular people, than most other jobs, but nowhere near like what the finance sector provides. And it would be great if the system somehow remunerated this one of the most important. I think doctors,
especially
teachers,
in this country.
Yeah,
NHS is crumbling, man.
Yeah, it depends how you ask. I talked to someone who is from Ireland, and they live here in London, and they said an interesting thing where if she was to choose one place in the world to get stabbed and needed urgent help, she would say she'd want to do it in this country. If you have an ongoing disease and a flu and a cold and something that, you slowly need to heal, it's going to be really tricky to do it here in the UK, as you have to go to the
that's
GP.
all we've experienced. Like my time in A&E here has just been for like sport-related injuries.
Yeah, and that is awful because when I had my shoulder injury, it was like absolutely useless until I finally went and asked for a steroid injection, and then it completely healed my shoulder. But she believes that the NHS really excels in being able to urgently give you help that you need. So it's interesting. But I never had that.
Or maybe like they're better at proper like life and death extreme emergencies.
Yeah.
Because I remember like a few months ago I did my lower back whilst training.
Oh, you mentioned. It passed quickly though, right?
I mean, eventually it was fine. I think I just got a really bad muscle spasm in my lower back. Probably didn't warm up enough. Should be doing better with that, considering my background. But I don't know. It was a rough day. I didn't sleep that well and stuff.
There we go. We just talked about sleep's importance.
See, it just shows you. And I was waiting in line in A&E for a good 3 hours.
Oh.
And then they're just like, just take painkillers.
Really?
I wanted an X-ray. I wanted to know if I bulged the disc. I just wanted, because at the time, standing upright hurt like hell.
Yeah, that sounds like a disc problem. I understand. Oh my God.
Yeah, but it was fine in the coming days.
Well, thank God for that. But what if it wasn't? It's just waiting 3 months to get an I wanted to ask you, so you've done this study regarding the beetroot and the effects it has on cycling. What's an experiment you'd want to do? What's something that you are interested in? Because I'm sure there are a few things.
That's a good one.
Just get the mic a bit closer as well.
A study that already exists or doesn't
Get the mic a touch closer.
All right.
Yeah.
A study that exists or doesn't exist?
Oh, so what's the point of redoing a study that does exist?
Just to validate it.
Okay.
Or maybe do it differently in a different cohort.
Well, tell me what you're passionate about. What's on your mind? Like if you let's say somebody gave you a £20,000 grant, like the university, you want a contest there, and they're like, yeah, do whatever you want with it. What would you do? Is that a good amount of money for a study?
First, we're probably gonna add another hour to this podcast of just me thinking.
That's all right. We've got all the time in the world.
Oh wow, there's so many possibilities. I'd say maybe the effect of certain foods on testosterone and hormonal health, because there's been associations and stuff. Very limited direct studies, like prolonged longitudinal studies.
I didn't know that foods can affect testosterone at all.
Yeah,
is there any proof of that?
That's a thing. That's why I want to do.
Where would you start? Research. What foods would you test for?
Well, it's been speculated like dark chocolate, salmon, like fish high in
Okay,
fatty
those are
acids,
all
avocado.
also associated to be aphrodisiacs.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the increased blood flow does something.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And the aphrodisiac effect may have an increase in testosterone because, as we know, arousal leads to a slight increase in testosterone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Huh. Is it long-term testosterone or is it
It's
because
very short term. It's short.
like if you test
That's why I want to know if you staple these foods into your diet, like, religiously eat them every day or every other day, what are the long-term effects on your testosterone?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So the control group would
The control group would not eat these foods.
Yeah, I guess you just don't. Or maybe do you have to tell the participants what you're testing them for? Can you just give them food and be like, follow my diet?
It's best to not tell them anything and just let them live their lives. Think that what you can control for, you try your best to control for, such as good quality rest and moving, that sort of thing. Because there's some things that can skew results. Imagine someone's on that diet.
Yeah.
Was like sleep deprived 24/7.
Yeah.
Like sleeps like genuinely like 2 hours a night, is constantly stressed, doesn't drink enough water, is in a calorie deficit. That's basically things that negatively impact testosterone.
Yeah. Oh, sleep impacts testosterone, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Wow.
So is being in a calorie deficit. An
Really?
aggressive one. Yeah, that's why when you lose weight, it's best to be at a slight deficit. And with a good amount of protein so you can retain muscle mass.
I'm glad you mentioned weight loss because I am recently a big fan of this new hormone that I found out about, which is the growth hormone. So correct me if I'm wrong. I understand that if you find a way to generate more growth hormone, whether it's through intermediate fasting or regular sleep schedules, or certain external stress factors like saunas, ice baths, long runs. What happens is a high amount of growth hormone, which I don't like the name of because it makes no sense for what it's related to. From what I understand, that high elevated level of growth hormone helps you lose specifically fat and keep specifically muscle if you are in a calorie deficit. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. And that's why loads of, for example, bodybuilders supplement, they dope with it.
Because I didn't know there was a growth
hormone. You can't just go to Holland and Barrett and be like, hey, we can have growth hormone. That's not how it works.
Why not, by the way? Like, why are some things you can supplement and some not?
The thing is, like, if you supplement with hormonal things, you could create a negative feedback loop. So say, let's give a fun example for this.
Yes.
Say you make Coca-Cola at home, all right? You're like, oh, damn, nice, I have Coca-Cola. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, Maxime, take this bunch of this carton of Coke, and you take it.
Right, I'm taking it.
And then the next day I'm like, oh, Maxime, take a carton of Coke. What are
you
going to do with your Coca-Cola? You're going to be like, I don't need to make some now.
Yeah, okay.
That's what happens.
Your body stops producing it on its own.
Yeah, and with testosterone, if you supplement with that, the effects are so... Bro, that's why testicular atrophy happens with bodybuilders. Like, there's this running joke, like, if bodybuilders have, tiny balls, essentially. There you go. You
know what makes so much sense? They say it's a good idea to get a little bit of testosterone, dopamine, at the age of 50 or 60.
I've heard of that as well. I need to look more into it, but because by the age of 50
you won't have a negative feedback loop because your body barely produces. Well,
your body's gonna barely produce it, so maybe having there's that's what you're describing is hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah. Okay, and that's like what is it called?
HRT.
Yeah,
HRT.
Exactly.
I guess in older populations it's better, but like when you're young, when your testosterone is like shooting constantly. You're just going to screw yourself over,
I've got a study for you, which I think you may find as fascinating as me.
Go on.
It's a study that was made on M&Ms. And it's something that I'm trying to decrease my alcohol consumption quite a lot. And not that I ever had a problem with it, but I just feel great not drinking. Yeah. And starting from this year, just I continue doing it for a bit, and I'm very, very happy with how I generally feel if I don't drink for a prolonged period of time. I got sidetracked. This study is about M&Ms. And it essentially gave one group of people M&Ms of the exact same color. Have you heard of this study?
No.
So, you know M&Ms, they taste exactly the same.
Yeah, they're just different colors.
They're just different colors. It's just a bit of chocolate with some peanuts inside.
Exactly.
And they gave one group just red, let's say, red M&Ms.
Yeah.
And they seen how much they ate on average. You know, if you give a bowl on a limited amount, how much you eat. And then the second group, they gave red and blue M&Ms. And the third group, they gave red, blue, and green M&Ms. And the more variety they introduced to the exact same tasting chocolate, the more people ate. And they've explained it because due to evolutionary reasons, the brain is looking for variety as it needs to collect all these different nutrients.
Yeah.
And they found that and it is pretty linear as well, and I think it starts getting diminishing returns after like 7, which means people will eat so much more at 5 different colors than at 4 different colors, and it's the same exact sweet. They just look a little bit different, and how you can use that information is where, you know, the whole clean diet.
Yeah.
That kind of shows some signals that this could be a good idea, because if we're planning to have steak later tonight, if we both just have a steak each, we won't really feel hungry after it.
Yeah.
We just eat the steak and we'll be fulfilled. And if somebody offers us 2 steaks instead of 1, we probably won't want to have 2 steaks because 1 was really enough. But somebody gives us a steak and adds some sauce on the side.
Yeah.
And then some potatoes and mac and cheese and some gravy.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit of vegetables and top it with dessert. You end up eating 3 times the calories.
Yeah.
But you can't stop yourself. And that's because of variety.
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating.
Wow, that's so cool, actually. That's the thing, like with humans, like you see something and then you see another thing and another thing. You get so intrigued. You get your curiosity kicks and you're like, I need to have this, this, and that.
And you don't feel full.
Yeah.
If you just eat steak and you eat and you eat and you eat, you will eventually get full.
Yeah, exactly.
You divide that between 2 different things.
Yeah.
You can eat like 1.5 the amount. You multiply that to 10 different things and you're at all you can eat. Boy, you're going to eat like 2,500 calories in one sitting.
That's the psychology behind buffets, I think. Like they have so much variety, so many different types of foods. They could have multiple cuisines in the same restaurant.
And you're going to eat it all.
You're going to be like, oh, I need to try this, this, and that. It's like psychological as well, isn't it? So.
I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
So I mentioned alcohol to you before. What I've tried to do is I tried to go a month where I only allow myself to drink one type of alcohol. And I would only go for whiskey. Also, there are studies that show that stronger spirits are less damaging to you than weaker ones. Apparently, it's not the alcohol that damages, that toxifies your brain. It's actually what your liver produces to digest alcohol that then has a very negative impact on your brain. So stronger liquors like whiskey and vodka and all these kinds of like 40 degree plus are easier digested than things like beers, ciders, white wine, and so on. So I opted for whiskey, and my logic was, well, if I'm going to go to a bar and I'm with friends and I'm in a social environment where I don't want to miss out on the human connection that alcohol does, because it does. It gives you that extra level of connection that is a bit, it takes longer. It's not more difficult, but it just takes longer to generate if you're without it. But instead of getting a beer and then a mojito and then some wine, I'm just going to stick to whiskey, and I'm not going to have 4.
That links to the variety
exactly.
you're talking about.
Worked so well. I probably reduced my alcohol consumption by 70%.
Oh, wow.
I changed it a few times because I went on a few wine tastings, and there, it wasn't the case at all. But most places I went to, I tried to stick with just whiskey, and it works so well.
Yeah. No, it's like, even me, I'm trying to think back to a similar scenario. Just like, I remember once I cooked 500 grams of salmon.
Okay.
And I'd say I'm a dude with a big appetite.
How many calories would you say you eat a day?
I try to aim for 3,000-ish.
So 500 grams of calories, let me guess. I would say that's around 700 calories? Because salmon is really not that much calories,
Yes,
right?
I think it's about almost 1,000.
About 1,000 calories?
Yeah, wait, sorry.
Yeah, do you want to pause? Let's pause. We'll be right back. And we're back.
Yeah, so for people like who want to lose weight, I feel like variety does have its importance.
So if you make like a, what did you say, 500 grams of salmon?
Yeah.
And you just eat that, you'll just be stuffed before you finish the whole portion.
So like, there's that, but then, the FOMO element, the fear of missing out. It's just like,
yeah, for sure.
There's cake in the fridge.
Yeah.
And then it's just like these nibbles, they just add up, and then that calorie deficit turns into a calorie surplus.
So to end this podcast, I wanted to tell you about another study that was made by some German scientists. So they actually have a YouTube channel. It's called Kurzgesagt. Do you know anything about it?
No.
Yeah, they're pretty great. They do like animated series, and they were discussing the links between your gut and the brain, which from what I understand every year seems to be higher and higher. So they said that if you consume a lot of certain foods, remember you used that Coca-Cola example? Let's say you keep giving your stomach Coca-Cola. What it needs to do is it needs to digest it. And from what I understand, it uses specific enzymes to digest different kinds of food, depending on their macros. And what happens is if you don't eat a food that you commonly eat or that you used to use when you were younger, you have a lot of enzymes which are there unemployed. Not a formal study word, but that's the gist. So your body is very efficient. It tries to reduce unemployment as the amazing host that it is. And so it starts sending signals to your brain indicating that, give me more of that stuff. And that's why you crave certain foods that you had when you were younger, because you have all these enzymes that are not necessarily doing it. That's why foods that are like fast food, which take a lot of enzymes to digest, is something that you're likely to crave because let's say there's going to be like 5 million of those units unemployed versus you never crave salads because that only takes 100,000 units to digest. So your body will crave whatever, has higher unemployment. And it was basically talking about this very interesting thing that you crave something, but there's a reason behind it.
Yeah, there's lots of psychological. I think it's all due to psychological and hormonal reasons. Because obviously, when you crave, for example, if you crave sweets, you have like a donut, for example.
Yeah. Well, that must be also dopamine.
Yeah, exactly. That was the point I was alluding to. And if you get a dopamine rush, you want to experience that again and again and again. That's how the cycle of addiction starts. And some people have that relationship with food. So,
I also heard that there, the difference between dopamine and endorphins is that from dopamine you start feeling diminished returns and inflation if you do the whole thing over and over again. But with endorphins you don't, which is why like the very wealthy people, they say that don't invest your time into things that give you dopamine because those will, you'll stop caring for those over time, but instead invest into connections with people and art.
Serotonin and everything.
Yeah. Or was it serotonin it could be serotonin that they say, because those are the feelings that even if you do 100 times over and over again, they will feel as fulfilling as before.
Yeah.
But with dopamine, if you do the same thing 500 times, it will not feel the same as it did the first time.
Yeah.
Malik, thank you so much for coming over.
It's my pleasure.
It was really great to record this episode with you.
I enjoyed our talk. Lots of interesting topics. And I hope to come here again and we could delve more into other things as well.
I'd love to have you back. Anything you want to tell Can we buy a course from you? Is there anything where we can find you, follow you, get in touch with you? Anything you want to plug in?
Well, I don't have any plugins, but all I want to say is I hope this is going to be the start of an excellent podcast. I'm honored to be the second ever guest here. And yeah, I'm sure this is going to go a long way and lots of interesting guests will come.
Thank you very much. Can't wait to have you back.
My pleasure.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.